The Old Testament reading is taken from the book of Exodus, chapter 12, verses 1 to 13. The Passover. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron in Egypt, "This month is to be for you the first month of your year. Tell the whole community of Israel that on the 10th day of this month, each man is to take a lamb for his family, one for each household. If any household is too small for a whole lamb, they must share one with their nearest neighbor, having taken into account the number of people there are. You are to determine the amount of lamb needed in accordance with what each person will eat. The animals you choose must be year-old males without defect, and you may take them from the sheep or the goats. Take care of them until the 14th day of the month, when all the members of the community of Israel must slaughter them at twilight. Then they are to take some of the blood and put it on the sides and tops of the door frames of the houses where they eat the lambs. That same night they are to eat the meat roasted over the fire, along with bitter herbs and bread made without yeast. Do not eat the meat raw or boiled in water, but roast it over a fire with the head, legs, and internal organs. Do not leave any of it till morning. If some is left till morning, you must burn it. This is how you are to eat it, with your cloak tucked into your belt, your sandals on your feet, and your staff in your hand. Eat it in haste. It is the Lord's Passover. On that same night I will pass through Egypt and strike down every firstborn of both people and animals. And I will bring judgment on all the gods of Egypt. I am the Lord. The blood will be a sign for you on the houses where you are. And when I see the blood, I will pass over you. No destructive plague will touch you when I strike Egypt." This is the word of the Lord. The New Testament is taken from 1 Peter chapter 1, verses 13 to 21. Be holy. Therefore, with minds that are alert and fully sober, set your hope on the grace to be brought to you when Jesus Christ is revealed at his coming. As obedient children, do not conform to the evil desires you had when you lived in ignorance. But just as he who called you is holy, so be holy in all you do. For it is written, "Be holy because I am holy." Since you call on a Father who judges each person's work impartially, live out your time as foreigners here in reverent fear. For you know that it was not with perishable things such as silver or gold that you were redeemed from the empty way of life handed down to you from your ancestors, but with the precious blood of Christ, a lamb without blemish or defect. He was chosen before the creation of the world, but was revealed in these last times for your sake. Through him you believe in God, who raised him from the dead and glorified him. And so your faith and hope are in God. Thanks be to God.
Please keep 1 Peter 1 open, and we are looking this morning at verses 13 to 21. Verse 13 of 1 Peter chapter 1. And verse 13 begins with a therefore, and the therefore signals that Peter is changing gear. He is switching to application. He's applying the truths that he outlined in verses 3 to 12 of chapter 1. Let's look back at those verses. Verse 3, praise be to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. Why, Peter? Because in his great mercy he has given us new birth into a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead, and into an inheritance that can never perish, spoil, or fade. This inheritance kept in heaven for you, who through faith are shielded by God's power until the coming of the salvation that is ready to be revealed in the last time. And Peter is saying, because of this great inheritance, you need to live like this. And this morning I have 3 points to help explain Peter's application to us. They are slightly contrived, but they may help you remember. They are stay alert, control the virus, and slave lives. Firstly, stay alert. Therefore, with minds that are alert and fully sober, set your hope on the grace to be brought to you when Jesus Christ is revealed at his coming. And commentators say that the 17th century version of the Bible, the King James, says it best. Gird up the loins of your mind. In Peter's day, they wore robes. And the robes were not practical for getting on with work and physical activity. So the men used to gather up the robes and tuck them in their belts. And our equivalent is to roll our sleeves up. In a sporting context, it's to rub in the deep heat, or to chalk our hands, or to put the pads on. It means prepare yourself for action, get ready. I have a special tie for business meetings, or at least I used to. I now work from home and barely remember to shave. But Peter is saying, focus, be ready. Through much of this letter, Peter is referring directly or indirectly to Old Testament passages. And here he's actually alluding back to the Passover. That story we read from Exodus chapter 12. The story of deliverance from Egypt. Moses says, let my people go. And Pharaoh says over and over again, no. There are 10 plagues, and the final plague is the death of the firstborn son. And Exodus 12:11 says, this is how you are to eat it, the Passover, with your cloak tucked into your belt, your sandals on your feet, and your staff in your hand. Eat it in haste. It is the Lord's Passover. Be ready for the journey. Judgment is coming to Egypt. Have your clothes on and your bags packed. You've got to catch an early flight. Be ready and focused for what? Be ready and be focused on what? Set your hope on the grace to be brought to you when Jesus Christ is revealed at his coming. One of my heroes is Justin Langer, the Australian cricket coach. And one of his mantras is the pain of discipline is less than the pain of disappointment. The hours on the training ground, the early morning runs, the constant watching of diet. Why does the sportsman or woman do it? They hope in the future, the podium, the cup final, the chance to raise the bat at Lord's. Peter says, focus on the prize. Why be a Christian? Peter challenges us to put this first, ahead of all other ambitions in life. To live for this, not a cup final, or our finals, or a final salary pension scheme, but the final day. Stay alert and focus on that final day. When Jesus is revealed, it will then be proved beyond all doubt to have been worth it. Secondly, control the virus. As obedient children, do not conform to the evil desires you had when you lived in ignorance. But just as he who called you is holy, so be holy in all you do. For it is written, be holy, because I am holy. The virus we all face is that of sin, of being conformed to evil desires. And Peter says, don't conform, instead be holy. He quotes from Leviticus 19, be holy because I am holy. What does the word holy mean? It means different, set apart, distinctive. It means purity and perfection. It is what God is like. And Peter echoes Leviticus and says, be like that. How on earth can we do it? In my job, I've worked with a coach, and the method that he utilizes is the Myers-Briggs personality types. And they're based on the work and theories of the psychologist Carl Jung. And against each personality type, the coach assigns a colour. He then shows us how our colour or personality influences for good or bad, how we operate and how we lead our teams. And one of the tricks of leadership he's trying to teach us is knowing when your preferred colour, your preferred style, is not what is needed for a situation, and being able to do another colour. In working with us, he's very, very careful to say, you need to do more and not be more. We can't be another colour. We can't change our personality, but we need to know when to do some of the behaviours of another colour. Why am I telling you all this? Well, Peter says, be holy because I am holy. And the Christian can be holy because we are now children. That's what verse 3 of chapter 1 says. Through the new birth of verse 3, we can bear the family likeness. We can be a chip off the old block. And please note that this is true only if we're adopted into the family, if we've had that new birth. If we try to do holiness without the new birth, it will end in ugliness. It will be like the Pharisees, washing the outside, but inwardly horrible. In fact, if we try to do it like a self-help program, it will lead to exactly all the things that Peter at the beginning of chapter 2 says we're to rid ourselves of. Therefore, rid yourselves of all malice and all deceit, hypocrisy, envy, and slander of every kind. So, control the virus by being holy. Thirdly and finally, slave lives. Since you call on a Father who judges each person's work impartially, live out your time as foreigners here in reverent fear. We have been saved, so how should we live? We should live with reverent fear. This doesn't mean to be scared or frightened of God. It means to live in awe of a Father who will one day judge the whole world. Why should we live like this, though? Well, Peter goes back again to the Passover illustration, back to Egypt and that last awesome night of God's judgment. The only way in which the angel of death would pass over the firstborn son was if the blood of a lamb without blemish had been painted on the door of the house. For you know that it was not with perishable things, such as silver or gold, that you were redeemed from the empty way of life handed down to you from your ancestors, but with the precious blood of Christ, a lamb without blemish or defect. The only way for us to be saved is by the death of God's firstborn son, the one whom John the Baptist declared was the Lamb of God. And Peter is saying, we have been saved at infinite cost, and therefore, knowing this, live in reverent fear. In chapter 2 and verse 16, he tells us to live as God's slaves, freed from Egypt, from the slavery of Egypt. Now we are to be God's slaves. Paul says to the Corinthians, you are not your own, you were bought with a price, and that price was the precious blood of Christ. The hymn, When I Survey the Wondrous Cross, ends with an incredibly challenging verse. Were the whole realm of nature mine, that were a present far too small, love so amazing, so divine, demands my soul, my life, my all. That's it. That's living in reverent fear. May God forgive my failure, may God forgive our failure, and may God give us new motivation to live in this way. So let's stay alert by focusing on that ultimate day. Let's control the virus of sin by shunning evil desires and instead be holy. And let's live slave lives by remembering the costly price that had to be paid.